life issues, and how to maintain moral integrity in today's world. Hi, I'm Paul Baxendale, and welcome to blog post number 19 and the beginning of a new series I'm going to be running alongside my old bodybuilding stories. It's a simple title, but the issues themselves will find ourselves having to dig quite deeply into many different fields: societal narratives, human behaviour, morality and ethics, and how to define your own life issues, and how much of our natural responses in life are the result of evolutionary biology and psychology. But that never means that you are hardwired into any type of behaviour. But we'll look at why we behave in certain ways, and I'll suggest my thoughts on when you need to override those base responses. And I'll be giving some personal experiences describing why I've come to think that way. Now, that probably sounded a lot to take in. So I'll kick off this week by choosing one simple example of life today and how I choose to behave regarding it, and the reasons for why I do what I do. Now, there's no point in messing around when it comes to our lives. So I'll pick a topic that may seem controversial to some, unspoken by many others, that of pornography. And yet it is used by most men and a surprisingly high number of women as well. Actually, studies have shown up to 98% of men and up to 70% of women have watched porn at some point in their lives. So it appears to be something that the vast majority of people do at some point in their lives, and many are watching it regularly, including, for example, some 43% of Christian pastors. Yes, actually 64% of Christian men admitted to watching porn in surveys. Now, the number may well even be higher than that, but we'll run with that. And 15% of Christian women also said that they watched porn at least once a month. So firstly, what do I think of pornography? And what do I think other men and women should do with regards its use? Now, I honestly believe pornography is one of the biggest problems in society. The fact that it has always been in use in society in some form or another, going way back to Roman frescoes and graffiti or Grecian vases and art, demonstrates that the issue is not a new one. And I'm sure many of you are wondering why I should believe A, that it's wrong and a force of negativity, and as its destruction in society, and B, the fact that I've never watched pornography, and not for religious reasons either, but just out of what I can only call intuition, and that I warn strongly against anyone using it, the reasons for which are quite complex and powerful. So I hope that you will accompany me and join me on the ethical, moral and philosophical journey that I'll be taking in this episode, breaking down the reasons why I think this way. But firstly, we know how many people are watching porn on a regular basis, including religious pastors and people with faith, many different faiths. But where does society draw the line in deeming watching it a problem or addictive behaviour? Well, psychologists sit on both sides of the fence regarding this issue. Some psychologists believe that pornography can be potentially healthy to relationships, whilst others see it as potentially destructive to both relationships and to the individual. I guess at least with me, you're not going to get any ambiguity. I don't believe that there is any grey areas with regards to this topic. I believe it is and always has been harmful to both the people watching it and the people involved in its production. Before the internet, there were films, videos, DVDs, and even before then there was 8-reel tapes. And then there was still people participating in the staging of photographs before that and other art forms. So there's always two sides to the industry, the voyeurs and the actors. And I will be arguing how destructive it is to both. The active participants in the industry, I'm going to leave towards the end of the discussion. And to start off with, let's look at and concentrate on the watching of porn and why even occasional and casual use is, I believe, a destructive force in your life. Now, as I was saying, psychologists have attempted to identify the point at which porn becomes a problem for the individual. Is it when they watch it for 2 hours every single day? Or simply when the action to press the play or simply click becomes almost a compulsive action, when simply bored or in need of a fix of sexual instant gratification? For let's be clear, that is what porn gives you. It degrades what once was and should still be the ultimate prize in the coming together of two people in a marriage or in a long-term committed relationship, to something that's as easy as pressing a button or a click. Now, if you don't see where the potential pitfalls in this from a societal, a relationship, and even from an evolutionary standpoint may be heading, then you need to pay more attention to your day-to-day behaviors and begin thinking about their consequences in everything, not just this issue. So let's start here with the simplification and degradation of what has been, evolutionarily speaking, something that would have been rarely enjoyed, if at all, by single young men without committed partners, and it's allowed them access, albeit by visual presence, not by actual physical presence, to be stimulated by watching two other or more people participating in sexual acts with no effort at all. And when I mean effort, I mean there's no having to go through the process of having developed themselves into such young men that a woman would firstly find them appealing and attractive, and then to enter into a relationship with a woman and hence have to maintain the qualities and attributes that a woman wants to see before she would let you anywhere near the position of possibly getting her pregnant, and hence engaging in such acts with her. He need not hold himself to any high moral code or participate in society at any level to have this access. It's there 24 hours a day, readily available for him or her and their desire for instant gratification. Now, if you don't think that will lead some young men into, at the very least, becoming lazy, not particularly concerned whether they get into a long-term relationship with a woman at all, or even engage in society, and at the worst causes them to disregard the thought of a long-term relationship with a woman or marriage completely, especially with the current MGTOW movement and talks of red flags here and red flags there, and the current divorce laws, then you can start to see why since the start of the 21st century, the US marriage rates have declined from more than 8 marriages per thousand to just 6 marriages per thousand. And it's now at the lowest ever since records began being taken. The same is seen here in the UK, with a drop in marriages in just 1 year from 2017 to 2018, and the rate has been falling all over the world in virtually every culture. In fact, in the UK, the marriage rates have dropped by some 47% since 1972, and the birth rate has fallen alongside it too. Now, it doesn't take a genius statistician to surmise that this isn't a healthy state for the human race. And despite narratives of there's too many people on the planet for the future, actually, most population models predict that the world's population will top out at around 9 billion by roughly the year 2064. And after then, it will steadily decline. So don't let the environmentalists, and I'm not having a go at any environmentalists here, except this is one of the points which they do continually espouse and wrongly persuade you otherwise. Now, I'm in no way saying that pornography is the sole cause of all these drops, but I do think that it may be a contributing factor at some point along the many reasons why this is happening. The MGTOW movement intrigues me. As a man, it's difficult to get my head around why a man would want to make the decision not to engage in relationships with women, and certainly not in any that would lead to commitment and marriage. However, after watching a few hours on YouTube of these types of videos, I began to understand better the reasons for it. But I believe that they have the issue the wrong way around, and they're seeking the lazy way out of the problem. They envisage the problem with having relationships with women. It's lazy. Lazy, yes, lazy and cowardly. Allowing men to go through life not demanding more of themselves so that they have to improve themselves to become the men that the highest value women choose. In evolutionary talk, are more likely to choose those men. So why become a man of high moral standing, of virtue, so that you are known for it, and that women know that the chances of you cheating on them are remote, if at all none, when you can just sit behind a computer, go to work, and fulfill your sexual appetites by porn instead, and just continuing on with your life? Yes, that's a much easier option than striving to improve yourself in all areas, and in doing so becoming a man that a good woman wants, so that you get to choose the highest value mate possible, evolutionary and societal speaking, that you can. One who has herself led her own life with virtue, honesty and integrity. Yes, men, there are many, many wonderful women out there just like this. It's just that you are either looking in the wrong places, or you're simply not attracting them because your own level of value as an attractive mate for the women is too low right now. Don't drop to the lowest denominator. Rise instead to the highest denominator. And that's my biggest issue with what I'm seeing on the internet with regards to advice for men, especially to young men. It's either motivational quotes or speeches based upon just a quote or a nice line, which will undoubtedly motivate you for 5 seconds or so, but it lacks the depth and staying power of a complete moral framework that you've thought and pondered about yourself daily for many months, and one which you contemplate actively on a daily basis. Either that, or you get the so-called red pill group, who, and not without some due cause, they view today's society as being set up to destroy male financial success should they achieve it. And they make the error of often marrying the wrong woman, who subsequently then has the stronger leverage in divorce and child rearing decision courts. However, as I said earlier, whilst I can understand where they're coming from, I do believe that the basis of their perspective is unbalanced. In other words, the foundation of their perceived suppressions and oppressions is wrong. I don't believe that men are better off not marrying or being without a lifetime partner. For a start, it's suicide for your DNA. And secondly, life is so much better, happier, exciting, comforting, challenging, and ultimately fulfilling when you share it with the right woman. And already I can almost hear the voices asking, but where are these right women, and how do you go about finding them? Well, the answer is complex and will take more than this one episode to answer, but we'll try and tweak out all the nuanced explanations and answers, and I will do so over the next few weeks and months. Now, the reason I spent so long discussing the MGTOW movement and the red pill movements is because they will be one group which probably sees pornography as a viable alternative to having a committed long-term relationship with a woman in order to reap the rewards of enjoying sex within a loving and trusted environment. And the reason I added those terms is that if any woman is going to truly give you all of herself, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, you can be sure as hell that she has to both love you and trust you implicitly in order to surrender herself to the vulnerability of that sexual encounter. Now, this quite neatly brings me to a massively important point, which is rarely discussed, possibly because most people don't even care about whether it's true or not. But pornography can never be a true substitute for the real thing. And I don't mean sex. I mean sex within love, or otherwise loving sex. Now, people may well argue that they are not interested in sex within a loving relationship, but whether you like it or not, millennia of evolution has created certain hormones to be produced within both the male and the female bodies during sex and orgasm. Even the most apparently roughest sexual encounter between two people will still produce the release of these hormones. And rough sex may be what is desired by the couple. Just because it's rough doesn't make it less loving. I don't think so. A true loving marriage or long-term committed relationship is precisely where the greatest amount of playfulness and adventure can be taken sexually, because the two of you both love and trust each other. If your current marriage or relationship isn't providing you with the type of sex that you truly desire, and that's the excuse that you're using for watching porn, then I would argue that it's your relationship you need to be working on, not taking the easy route in addressing why you don't feel that you can explore such possibilities that you're thinking about with your partner. Have you asked him or her? How have you asked them? Was it in a way that made them feel still respected and held in awe? Or did you just blurt it out as though you were embarrassed yourself for even saying it? I think that most people grow up thinking that sex is almost a taboo subject, and even in a marriage. And yet a marriage can rarely be completely happy and fulfilling if sexual intimacy isn't an integral part of each week. It can reconnect couples who often live very separate lives during the day. Perhaps both are working and busy with less time than our forefathers and our forebearers had to devote to each other. But again, it's all about making the effort, working to get the result that you desire. And if you want a happy, continually intimate relationship and marriage, and to maintain the spark and the joy that it did at the very beginning, then you may have to put in some time, perhaps a lot of time, to making sure that both you and your partner work on all aspects of the relationship, including sexual intimacy and fulfillment. Leaving aside the things that can be done to improve the intimacy of your relationship, which will have to be covered in a future post, let's return to the unnatural acts that form part of pornography. How does this guy know that pornography is unnatural? I can hear you ask the question, if he doesn't watch it. Well, I've obviously heard it discussed often enough and seen way too many clips that have been shared by friends to know the basic outlines of the scripts. If they even have scripts, I don't think so. If you're not aware, the men and the women engaged in the pornography industry are not your averagely built men and women of real life. And I don't mean that men are overly muscular or the women exceptionally thin or fit, as those two things aren't deemed necessary in the industry as far as I'm aware. What I mean is the men use various medications, pills, injections, pharmaceutical aids to enable them to perform longer periods on a set. Some have also undergone penis enlargement operations, some even resorting to having implants inserted into their penises to create far from normal appendages that you or I may have. And no, I'm not going to discuss my own dimensions here. Okay, I'm making light of it, but it's very serious, and it's often a very dangerous game for the men as well as for the women. Obviously, breast augmentation is very common in the industry, but also is surgery on their genitals, with now the mainstream cosmetic industry seeing women, not even in the industry but from the general public, coming in for alterations to their vulvas and labias due to their perceived feelings that their own natural bodies are not good enough or not perfect, like they imagine the women in the porn industry to be. Women active in the porn industry for years can and do permanent damage to their genital areas and internal muscles, both in their vaginas and in their anal areas. And women aren't alone in having cosmetic surgery on their genitals to replicate the look of the porn stars. Men too are now having cosmetic surgery to enhance or tidy up their genitalia. And if all of that doesn't fill you with some unease, then I think you need to think harder about what you believe your life is really about, and whether or not you wish to actually do something special with your life and leave a legacy, or become just one of millions and millions and billions of others who become mere dust and bones the day after they are buried, with no one to remember their deeds for even a single day. So it degrades an act of procreation that the human body has evolved through thousands, if not millions of years, to also bind two people together, something often referred to as pair bonding today in natural and biological circles, to one simple act of pleasure, often particularly degrading for the women in the industry, as they are often to be seen as submissive in the industry, and there simply for the sole pleasure of the male. Taking this one reason then, let me try and put some philosophical take on it, and perhaps a religious one too, for those of you who believe in a religion. Now firstly, what would a Stoic philosopher have to say about pornography, I wonder? Well, none of the Stoics ever taught directly about pornography, but they certainly studied desire, pleasure, moderation, justice, and well-being. So I think I have some suggestions as to what their advice would be. Firstly, they would ensure that the understanding of the word was correct, and pornography is defined as a document that explicitly represents at least one sexual act. Therefore, the 3,000-year-old papyrus of Turin, the Kama Sutra, the literary texts by the Marquis de Sade, to the most recent videos made by the largest porn production company, all fall under the description of porn. The Stoics would argue that in itself pornography belongs to the category of the indifference, which means that it has no moral value in itself, that it is our relationship to pornography that expresses either good or evil, with good referring to virtues, justice, moderation, courage, prudence, and excellence of character, which is the basis for our own happiness. Evil, on the other hand, refers to the vices, inner weaknesses that will make us unhappy and subject to external events. For a Stoic, the human must work for the common good. An action cannot be good just for oneself if it's not good for others. Thus, Stoics would view pornography through the prism of both its harmful effects on ourselves, but just as much its harmful effects on society and the actors and actresses involved in it. Supporters of the industry have argued that pornography can be ethically produced. However, the vast majority of porn on the internet, in the studies that I've researched, show situations where the consent of the actors and actresses is not established at all. Even scenes of male domination, simulated rape, incest, and abuses of power and authority, which appear to be common scenes, can never be argued to have been seen as consensual. And even where actors and actresses have claimed to be fully willing and consenting participants in the industry, it's not hard to find psychological issues of very ill mental health, poverty, abuse, and low to valueless self-esteem. It's not without reason that the word itself, pornography, is derived from the French words for porne, which means prostitute, and graphe, meaning writing. The relationship between pornography and the human trafficking industry has also been highlighted by several investigations. So, Stoics like Marcus Aurelius, his words would seem appropriate here. When you make a mistake against someone, you also make a mistake against yourself. By harming others, you also do yourself a personal wrong, since you are perverting yourself. The Stoic foundation concept of making every other human a brother or a sister would strike hard at that industry and its viewing of it too. Would we not question our brother or sister's participation in such a film? Now, this isn't a cheap way of moralizing by trying to disgust ourselves either, but simply relying on our own moral intuitions. Musonius Rufus's words, "You recognize that for man, evil consists in injustice and cruelty and indifference to a neighbor's trouble, while virtue is brotherly love and goodness and justice and beneficence and concern for the welfare of one's neighbor." Now, to the issue of a Stoic's advice to those who watch pornography, as we've already found, it's difficult to find men who have never watched porn. But it's also difficult to find men who, once they watch it, stop watching it. Therefore, the viewing of it would seem to be seen as a moral weakness, plus the fact that men admit to being drawn to ever extreme scenes, which is due to the large discharge of dopamine that's released when you watch it. Stoics would see this as you being controlled by your emotions rather than you using your reason, and hence simply a weakness and a danger to your purpose in life and a danger to your soul. How can you be devoting all of your energy to your greater purpose if you're wasting it and your energy, which has a finite limit, by watching porn? You can't. I've read articles on people arguing, when viewed moderately and controlling their use of how much and how often they view it, that they then argue that it does not hinder the viewer's progress to virtue. And if he can keep it under his control, then it can become a neutral, such as a vegan could eat meat knowing that an animal had died its natural death after living a peaceful life in the wild. But personally, I would still argue that the watching of porn is still a search for pleasure itself. It doesn't bring anything to his or her moral or virtuous progression, and therefore he or she should abstain from it completely. And I think all Stoics would agree that if you have your mind and your body in alignment and contentment, then they become aware of the uselessness of such pleasures. As Seneca said, this is why the ancients bade us lead the highest, not the most pleasant life, in order that pleasure might not be the guide, but the companion of a right thinking and honourable mind. So, as I think you would have likely guessed at the start of the video, I don't believe watching pornography can be done if your intention is to lead an honourable, virtuous, noble, honest and courageous life. Actually, it will weaken your mind, leaving you less honourable, less noble, less honest and less courageous. Why honest, you might ask? Well, if someone asked you what you had done the evening before, or maybe that morning, and you had been watching porn, would you say so? Or would you lie and say you'd been doing something else? So Stoics would deem it a weakness. Well, what about religion? Well, we know of those 98% of men who have admitted to watching porn at least once. Many of them must be either Christians, Muslims, Jews, or devotees of another religion. In fact, one survey showed that some 43% of Christian pastors admitted to have watched porn in the last month. And that is of those who admitted in saying yes. The survey was anonymous, but I think we all know that even under those circumstances, some would have said no who had done. Christianity is the religion that I'm most familiar with. And the Bible, I'm sure, states in Ephesians, I'm sure, fornication and all uncleanliness and covetousness, let it not be named among you as is fitting for saints. In Matthew, it states, whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. It goes on to say, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of you members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And yet, still in Bible colleges, one study showed 68% of males intentionally viewed a sexually explicit website whilst at the school. The problem is increasing, it's not decreasing too. That figure shocked me, and I've been around a lot longer than most of you. Did you know that every 39 minutes a new pornographic video is uploaded onto the internet? Every second, 28,258 internet users are watching porn. Now that's a pretty gross thought to me. At last, the church seems to be aware of the impact of porn on its own house, as well as its impact on society. It has looked at the argument that watching porn can be good for marriage, that when viewed together, it can invigorate a couple's sex life. Now, of course, all psychologists know the truth, that it actually desensitizes the viewer to his or her own spouse. The so-called perfection of the porn stars actually now becoming human freaks causes women especially to doubt whether their husbands find them sexually attractive anymore. And when, as it is, the husband suggests that they watch porn together, she is often left with the thought that she isn't enough to satisfy her husband anymore. No, there's not much that is more destructive to a marriage or a relationship than porn. And yet, through my life, I've been good friends with 3 pastors of churches who have all had a problem with watching pornography, an addiction to it, and who have come to me sharing their guilt because of their behavior? Is there something particular about Christianity that could be causing this? I once thought so, because I couldn't believe that of those pastors that I knew well, every single one of them had a problem with watching porn. But as the years have gone by, I've realized that the church is simply a reflection of all of society. Although congregations may sometimes wish to think they are holier than their neighbor, there are many who can go to a church on a Sunday morning and in the Sunday afternoon be found clicking on the internet looking for porn. The Bible makes it very clear about God's view on it. Proverbs say, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." In other words, if your thoughts are immoral, then you are immoral throughout your entire body. In Islam, pornography is seen as haram, a disease. Anyone who watches it or engages in it should seek repentance and giving it up immediately. And the Quran emphasizes this by saying, "But whosoever turns away from my reminder verily, for him is a life of hardship." So philosophically and religiously, we can start to see the arguments building up now against watching pornography. Now let's look at other ways at which the arguments against watching it should begin to start to make you feel uneasy if it is currently part of your life. Watching porn actually changes your brain. As mentioned before, watching it releases dopamine, but every time you watch it, it reduces the effect of the dopamine on your brain, and hence your need for more and more dopamine is sought, which leads the watcher to search for more and more extreme and dangerously perverse ways, far from the noble, honourable man or woman I'm sure you want to be. A worrying piece of research has also shown that watching porn can normalise the images you watch and make them seem normal or even commonplace, which can then lead to more dominating and harassing behaviour towards women in real life. It is shown to lessen compassion for rape victims, and it can lead to a more violent attitude towards women, which has even led to actual violence against women. If that wasn't enough, watching porn frequently can lead to sexual dysfunction. When it comes to porn watchers engaging in sexual intimacy with their partners, they often experience having problems having and maintaining an erection and difficulty in reaching orgasm, as he has become so disconnected to his partner. And often people have reported that they've needed to rely on remembered images from porn to actually reach orgasm. Yet these same men have no problem getting and maintaining an erection and reaching orgasm when watching porn. Now, it should be clear by now that the arguments for avoiding pornography completely are powerful, and it doesn't surprise me that people who watch porn have self-esteem and self-image problems, which often translate into them becoming detached from society, and especially from women in society. If your goal in life is to become the most honest, virtuous man or woman of integrity and truth, courageous enough to boldly pursue your purpose on this earth, I hope you can see by now how watching porn can never be a part of who you are and what you do on any day. Although the World Health Organization do not recognize porn addiction as a mental health illness, there are many things in which I disagree with the WHO, but so I won't let them worry about disagreeing with them on this issue either. Porn addiction can become or is a mental illness. It's an obsession on thinking about it, finding that it begins to impact on your day and even your work sometimes. Compulsive behavioural habits that can cause loss of sleep and even medical issues with your genitals. It begins to affect your relationships with other people, especially your wife or partner, and even to financial hardships due to increased time spent watching pornography and losing work or not getting as many jobs done. Whereas religions view watching porn as a sin, I, as a Stoic, view it as a destructive force within your own body and soul, and also as an indicator of society's decline into depredation and weakness. Now, as a historian, I can also combine my knowledge of the Greek and Roman Stoics with the corresponding rise and fall of their respective empires and societies. I don't think it's any coincidence that at the height of the Greek Empire, we see Athens as a hotbed of philosophers debating, discussing, pursuing knowledge on how to improve oneself and one's society. This is also matched with the art of the period, which sees statues of men extremely muscular, lean, defined, and masculine. Now, as Greek society became more corrupt, depraved, and sexual codes were relaxed, and sometimes there were no rules at all, we also see the change in art. At the exact same time, we now start seeing sculptures of men become less masculine, more rounded bodies, often boyish looking, and often, when archaeologists have found shattered pieces of sculpture, they've struggled to know whether the statue has come from a man or a woman. A far cry from the muscular, linear, masculine pieces of art seen when sexual morals and philosophy were firmly in control of society in Athens. So too, we see the exact same event occur within the Roman Empire. A coincidence? I don't think so. When Marcus Aurelius was Caesar and Rome was expanding its might across the known world, Stoicism was the ruling philosophical principle school. And its ruling principle as Romans looked towards their Stoic leader for an example of how to live an honourable and a good life for themselves and for their society. And then as Caesars started to believe themselves gods, and sexual orgies and depravities began to occur on a regular basis in Rome, the circus was in session every day. Little work was getting done. Their armies began to suffer defeats by opponents that previously they would have had little trouble in defeating. Sexual graffiti begins to be seen in the remains of houses that even today can be seen. Scenes of sexual orgies are seen in murals and paintings, and as with pornography, it appears that the dopamine rush the Romans were getting needed more and more extreme practices to quench their thirst for their sexual mores. Their architecture, once made from pure marble and tremendous arches celebrating great victories and successes, then began to slide. It then began to be brick-built structures with only marble facings. So they had the appearance of marble, but the quality was in reality plain brick. Did the Greek and Roman empires suffer from a declining morality, which then resulted partly from their weaknesses and lack of strength and honour to maintain ethical and moral standards, which eventually saw both collapse under conquering forces, never again to rise to the heights of their previous history? I don't know if that is the case, but I would argue strongly that the lessening in moral standards and a weakening focus on the individual as men and women as virtuous, noble, honourable, honest, courageous members of society was a cause, a contributing factor in the decline of both empires. Now, the question is, are we again seeing the declining morals, ethics and virtues within our own society? I think I'll let you be the decider of that. But I would suggest that although no period is ever without its sexual predators and sexual prey, and some people have always lowered themselves to sexual objects, I think since the 1950s in particular, possibly we could pinpoint it to the 1960s and to the introduction of the birth control pill, that Western societies have never gathered to discuss philosophically or morally how the changing social and sexual landscape can be handled with equality but also with honour and virtue, that the standards of what is good in a man and in a woman, they've never really changed in thousands of years. And yet we let society free to make its own choices and decisions based on what? Emotions? Again, I hear the stoic within me crying out for reason, not emotion, if a truly magnificent outcome is to be the goal. Well, we've covered a large topic today. We've gone into biology, psychology, history, art and philosophy, all to discuss what perhaps many of you thought was a fairly meaningless and harmless topic. I've thought for some time that pornography is actually one of the most destructive forces that we as individuals and as a society have to face today. And I hope that this has given you some different perspectives on the subject, and maybe even open your eyes a little to what a wide impact it's having on the men and women of today. Are relations suffering due to it? Undoubtedly. Are individuals suffering and causing themselves harm because of it? Yes, I believe so. And yet I'm not coming from a religious perspective of it's a sin, although it is to religions. But I'm coming as someone who would like to believe, I would like to believe there is a God, but I just don't know. I'm coming from a place of thought, of deep thought and of reading and of concern, genuine concern for young men and women who are striving to become the very best at what their purpose is in life. For young women who are being harmed by the industry in multiple ways, but mainly in the way that is affecting how men are having their attitudes regarding sex change because of it. And I want to help. Please stop any women being drawn into thinking that this is normal, good, certainly not natural, and definitely so far below what they are truly worthy of, they must never ever contain the idea that this is ever normal behaviour for either men or women. Now, being from the bodybuilding industry, which has always had an association with the sex industry, or at least being paid for either naked photographs to pay-per-view sessions, particularly with gay men, to actual involvement in the pornographic film industry. I've also many personal stories of people I've known myself who have got involved in what the industry is called G4P, or gay for pay, where male bodybuilders allow clients to perform various acts on them. Now, it may be as little as masturbating over them, or they may wish to feel someone's muscles. But it obviously also goes all the way to full intercourse or oral sex. Women too in our bodybuilding industry are also sought out for sexual pleasure by men who are stimulated by women with muscles. Some may pay to be wrestled by them. Others will again wish for more, and it's not unusual for once involvement in what can be called nothing but prostitution at the end of the day, for the individuals to then sign up for involvement in the adult entertainment industry, porn. For anyone who claims that pornography has a plus side or benefits that can help people, all I can say is that every single one of the people who I know personally who got into that industry had their life spiral downwards into either drug abuse and addiction or even death. In two of the cases I know, the one led to the other. In other words, to cope with the feelings of shame, of guilt, emptiness, no self-esteem and disgust the work provoked in them, they turned to drugs as a means of escaping those feelings. And that drug use then led to their deaths. So I'm not only talking about this from a hypothetical perspective, as a psychologist or as a philosopher or a general humanitarian, but as someone who has had actual experience of people who have been involved in it. Now, knowing people who have been in porn and seeing how their lives turned out or ended doesn't give me total insight into it by any means, and I don't claim to be all knowledgeable about it, about all the nuances of pornography. But I hope that with the thoughts that I shared earlier, the moral, the biological, the psychological, and even spiritual arguments made. The added fact that I also come from a place of personal experience of what it has done to people within it, I hope adds some added credence to the whole of my arguments with regards to this issue. Have I also known people whose lives have been damaged by simply watching pornography? Yes, absolutely. I can think of at least 5 people that I've known who have either lost their family, their jobs, their self-respect, and even irreparably destroyed what could have been a glorious future in front of them as a result of just watching porn. I would say without a doubt that you can never say the phrase just watching porn. As from what I've shared with you, I hope you can also see the lines that connect porn watching with a gradual loss of virtue, self-respect, integrity, and then courage and honesty, and eventually their very purpose itself. No, I don't think there is ever such a thing as just watching porn. So, friends, I hope this wasn't too serious an episode for you, but it's a very important one, and one that the mainstream society seems loath to address. Hence why I felt it essential that I shared the knowledge that I have on it. Now, I'm not saying blindly agree with me and anything I ever say in these videos, but I do ask you to think about what I've said and think of your own personal values and aims in life. Do you want to change society for the better? Do you want to find a loving, honourable and worthy man or woman who will commit the rest of their lives to you and to you alone? Do you want to accomplish great things and leave a legacy with your name, so that your name is remembered 1,000 years from now, just as Marcus Aurelius' name is still remembered today? If so, then take back control of your mind, place reason first and forefront, and put emotion back to its important but rightful place as the thing that gives energy to the reasoned decisions that you make. Let me leave you this week with 3 thoughts and writings from Marcus Aurelius. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. If it's not right to not do it, if it's not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius. Thank you again for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me, thank you. And have a great week. Just be that good woman or man that you know you should and you could be. And don't forget that when all energy is gone, that when there seems no options left but to quit, when your body begins to fail, you reach down and you dig deep and you get those 3 more reps that are always inside of you. Goodbye, thank you, and I'll see you next week.